He is presently has a thriving neurological practice right here in Moline, Illinois, and he is a proud member of our Tea Party and a heck of a nice guy. Welcome, Dr. Brian Anseeuw.
Good morning, patriots and patients. A little introduction here. I practice neurology. As a practicing neurologist, most of our patient base is elderly. And when we see that we have over 77 million baby boomers coming into retirement this year, my practice is going to get bigger. And because of the fact that their retirement age, they rely on Medicare. Now, when we look at the treatment of neurology, with ObamaCare coming down the line, what we see is substantial changes. First of all, when I started practice about 15 years ago, I could see about 25 to 28 patients a day. Because of these new requirements that we're starting to see, even before Obamacare, I can see about 15 a day. I spend more time doing paperwork than I do treating patients. I work about 8 to 9 hours in my office a day, and about every 2 or 3 weeks, I have to take 2 days off or spend the whole weekend just catching up on paperwork. That slows us down. There's a thing that we call EMR, electronic medical records. Electronic medical records are supposed to streamline medical care and make it where there's less physician mistakes. However, when we see a patient, no longer are we looking eye to eye to each other. I'm looking at a computer screen filling out the dots in order to fulfill my requirements for the EMR for Medicare. And without that eye-to-eye contact, I could miss things. You know, it's easy to say when you're in the kitchen, make me some cookies. You go to the recipe book and pull out a thing that says chocolate chip cookies and you read it and you make it. The government is trying to make medicine like that, and it doesn't exist. Because there's a thing that we get in physicians called a gut feeling. And when we see somebody that comes in for one problem and we ask them about it, sometimes we get a gut feeling that even though it doesn't follow that recipe, but that gut feeling tells us that something's wrong, and you don't see that when you stare at a computer. An example of this is I had a patient come in last year, 54-year-old lady. She comes in with her husband, and I could tell when I introduced myself, she didn't want to be there. Her husband wanted her there. So right there, that tells me a clue. If your spouse drags you in to see the neurologist, there's a reason you're there. So I asked her the question. She downplays her symptoms. Occasionally, I trip and get clumsy. And her husband agrees to that. So I check her out. I do my exam. I do my history. Perfectly normal. But there's something going on. Even though her neurological exam is normal, her physical exam is normal, there's something going wrong. So I have this feeling, this gut feeling. You need an MRI of your head. So with her, I said, you know, right now, everything checks out okay, but I'm a little bit concerned of this history that you're giving me and the fact that your husband brought you here. So let's get an MRI of your head. So she has one of the larger insurance companies. I requested an MRI. I had to do a physician-to-physician peer review. So the insurance company calls me and they say, okay, tell me about this patient. And I said, all right, she's 54-year-old female that comes in by her husband. She has intermittent clumsiness and stumbling. And I knew that if I said her exam is completely normal, she doesn't have headaches, vision's fine, they're going to say, doesn't fit that criteria for that test you're requiring. So I have to embellish things. We call it lying. if Obama does it. So I embellished the story a little bit. So they said, all right, we'll approve it. So we get the MRI done. The radiologist calls me from the MRI unit. Oh my God, Brian, this woman's got the biggest brain tumor I've ever seen. And I said, all right, I said, give her the disc of the MRI and send her up. And I'm thinking to myself, did I miss something on her examination? So she brings in the disc, comes back up, I re-examine her, perfectly normal. I look at her film and it's like, oh my God, I've never seen a tumor in a person that was able to function. I sent her over to my neighbor, the neurosurgeon. He does a biopsy, and they don't exactly know what tumor it is, so they send her to Iowa City. But that right there tells us the importance of this physician-doctor relationship that we have. And that's worth more than anything. Because when you know a physician and patients that get established by me, you know, I come in and I see them and I know exactly, you know, what's going on with them. I can say, hey, something's changed here or something's going on. And this is what we need. And with this Obamacare, it's going to take that away. Because we just seen it in the state of Illinois. Governor Quinn decreased the amount of Medicaid. And what they were talking about earlier with Stephen, the less reimbursement the physicians get, the less patients they can see with that insurance. Now, even in my practice, because I see so heavily Medicare patients, I have to try to limit the amount of Medicare that I see, because it would run me out of business. One of the biggest things that we see in Illinois, that we're number 4 in malpractice is extreme in this state. Matter of fact, when I started here 12 years ago, we had 5 neurosurgeons on this side of the river. Now, how many do brain surgery? 1. Can he work 24/7 every day of the week? No. So when you're out there driving on the highway, it's like going to the boat. You get in an accident, you just rolled the dice, because there may not be somebody in that, what we call that golden hour of treatment. And it's happened to some pretty famous people here that had brain hemorrhages, were not able to be treated here, and died in Iowa City. Matter of fact, now the problem we have is when I want to request a transfer to Iowa City, I get rejected because they've been screwed by this state for paying Medicaid too much that they won't even accept them unless they have private insurance. We have to send them down to Peoria. Perfect example of this the other day, no neurosurgeon on call. As a neurologist, I'm a medical neurologist. I get called because a fellow fell down the steps, brain hemorrhage. He was unstable, no neurosurgeon here. Iowa City went and take him. Peoria went and take him because he was unstable, couldn't move him. No neurosurgeon, what do? There's nothing we can do. And that's what we're going to see is the deficiency of specialists and the shortage of primary care physicians. When we look at a physician, and we heard this when Obama was talking about the health care earlier. If your kid has a sore throat, you take him to the doctor. Well, why would that doctor want to treat that patient for $65 for an office call or $75 for an office call when he can make $8,000 taking the tonsils out? Well, Mr. Obama doesn't realize that surgeons remove tonsils, primary care physicians don't. That physician has no monetary gain to refer that patient to get the tonsils out. I mean, this year, or last fall, my wife, over 40, had to have her tonsils out. My daughter, 2 weeks later, had to have her tonsils out. That primary physician didn't have any influence or didn't get anything from that. Same way with the example he used, if you have a diabetic ulcer on your foot, wouldn't it be better just for the doctor just to whack that leg off and make $8,000 for an amputation? Well, does Mr. Obama know that the surgeon doesn't make $8,000? They make about $800. And you know, the lies, and, you know, we see too many things on TV where, you know, the person goes to the hospital and the doctor shows and everybody walks out alive or whatever, but, you know, life is not like this. You know, the mandate, the death panels that we hear, this is a reality, and we see it. You know, I think one of my oldest patients is 99, still pretty functional. You know, yeah, granted, let's say if she has, you know, a big brain tumor, are we going to do any treatment? Probably not. Should we do treatment? Probably not. But you need to educate that patient. But if it's a 65-year-old or 75-year-old that is running a marathon, and I have patients that are in their late 70s and they run and exercise, if they need a pacemaker, should they get one? Yes. But when we have a government that puts no value on human life, if it's the day of conception or their 99th year, it doesn't matter. Matter of fact, when I started and graduated from medical school, I was considered a physician. I'm not now. I'm a provider. You guys aren't patients anymore. You're units. You know, my first introduction to national health care was when I was a medical student in Detroit, Michigan at Wayne State, up in Southfield, Michigan. And I grew up in a little small town south of here called New Windsor. So as a medical student, you got to do all the work. We call it grunt work for the physicians, the residents, and that. And one thing I noticed when I was looked through there, I'd see Windsor. And the name Windsor would catch my eyes because I'm from New Windsor. So I was looking at this as Windsor, Canada. And after a while, I started to see all these patients from Windsor, Canada. And we're in Detroit, on the Detroit side of the river there. So finally, I asked the patient, I said, why are you coming here? I said, Windsor's a pretty good sized city. And this was 1992. I didn't know anything about national health care. And I said, why are you coming over here? And it was Blue Cross Blue Shield, Michigan Blue Cross Blue Shield. And they told me each one, and then once I asked the one, I started to ask all of them, because you can't get nothing done in Canada. And it started to make me realize, you know, what this national health care is, you know, free care. Well, you know, if it's free but you can't utilize it, it's worth nothing. And we had a physician, and matter of fact, when I was doing surgery there, one of the physicians was England. And we were talking one time because I was asking him about this because I really had no clue what it was. And he told me he came to the United States after an incident that happened when he was a resident in England. It was at 5 o'clock, he said, or just a little bit before 5 o'clock. There was a major accident, and they brought a kid in for surgery. This kid that was involved in the motor vehicle accident needed emergency surgery. The other surgeon hadn't come to work yet, so this guy was still on. He told him it turned 5 o'clock, and the guy took his scrubs off and said, I'm out of here. And the guy goes, we need to do emergency surgery on this kid or he's going to die. He goes, from 9 to 5, I'm on the Queen's time. After 5, I'm on my own. And he left, and that kid died. And that resident moved to the United States and became a surgeon here because of that. So this is what we're looking forward to, because it doesn't matter what border you lay on, this is how national health care is going to be. And it's scary. Matter of fact, I do a lot of hunting up north in Canada. And 4 years ago, I had my guide's wife called me up. She goes, Brian, can I come down there and can I have you get me an MRI? And I asked her, she's up in Whitehorse, Yukon. And I said, Trish, why don't you just get one up there? She goes, I've been on the list for 9 months. And I said, you gotta be kidding, it's just an MRI. And she goes, you know, she hurt her arm and it herniated it.